So when we left you, you had been through just an unbelievable ordeal, you and your father both. But we ended on kind of a high note, right? We ended, you had this long battle to get him his Purple Heart, and we ended with him actually receiving his Purple Heart and that ceremony. Um, so, some of our listeners might think the story ended there, but of course it didn't, right? You still had the work ahead of you at that time of getting some of his other issues service connected.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I believe in the last episode, we were on appeal number 4 for the PTSD and TBI portion of his service connection. So yeah, still a lot of appointments, a lot of different claims opened. Working with the Disabled American Veterans as his sponsor, they kept identifying things that we should open claims for, like his tinnitus, his hearing loss, his back pain and issues, just a lot of things that I guess being so consumed, I didn't necessarily identify, and it's interesting how the VA will do like your right knee and your left knee, and those are separate, and your right ankle versus your left ankle, or the left hip and the right hip, and all of that stuff collectively has got us to where we are. But I'm grateful for the DAV because I never would have known how to piece all of that apart to get him the help that he needs.
Wow. So you had to break everything down to isolated units and file claims on each?
On each. And I think collectively, Michael, we did 12 claims that were filed on his behalf. And all of them have now been service connected.
And over what kind of a time period? 3 years? 4 years?
4.5 years. Yeah, because he got his service connection notification in December of 2021. So
just 6 months ago.
Correct.
How have things changed for him now that all of his various issues are service connected?
I mean, in a very positive way, because being 100% service connected, he now has the benefit of going to any doctor for any service that he needs, and then resubmitting all of that claim through the VA thereafter. Whereas before he had to get approved prior. With his mental health as well, he's able to still go to the vet center. He's done a couple of different therapies there, and we're so grateful for those people that work at those vet centers. He's been through light therapy. They've tried to help him through a bunch of those, PTSD and TBI kind of in conjunction related therapies, try to kind of rewrite some of the endings that were really haunting him. I mean, your listeners probably remember him sharing stories of like, it was always the same 4 dreams, or it was always the same 5 things, and they always ended the same way. So his light therapy sessions that he did helped him to rewire in his brain when those triggers start, like, let's let it end this way instead. And not that it could be positive, but just a different way to think about things to where it didn't always take him down that dark hole. So while that has been really great, I shared before that my dad lives in a very rural part of Idaho. And so part of his VA care is what they call through the community of care. So we have had some issues where, documentation hasn't been done correctly. My dad was prescribed a medication for his mental clarity that, we later found out, because he also has glaucoma, could have caused a stroke. And his doctor didn't know that because his community of care team didn't document it correctly in his file. I'm grateful that as soon as he was prescribed that, I Googled it and looked up all of the, side effects, anything to watch for, anything to be aware of. And right there, blaring at the top, said, if you have glaucoma, do not take this medication. And so, we had to file a grievance against that because it was just a misstep between that community of care. But holistically, he is being cared for on a level that he never could have imagined in the past. And we're grateful for that.
And how's that changed his day-to-day experience?
Every day is a battle. The PTSD and the TBI are always there, right? I mean, he wakes up every day and has to make the choice to have a good day, to try and do his best, not to travel to that space that just is sometimes hard to dig out of. So while I'd like to say like this has made everything all better, right? We got the Purple Heart, we got him 100% service connected, everything's great. That's a lie. And your listeners would know that's a lie, because every single day the PTSD is there. The memories are there. He's doing an exceptional job, though, taking care of himself and, going to his appointments, attending his therapy sessions at the vet center, and really being cognizant of his triggers and, how to work through his triggers. His cognitive behavioral therapy, which he did at the vet center a couple of years ago, that 12-week program that he did, really helped him to be like mindful. More mindful of what was going to set him off and what kind of conversations and what kind of social interactions. And so he's just really, really working hard to be on top of that. He's also aging, though, as we know, and his mental clarity is not what it used to be, and that's frustrating for him. So forgetting little things here and there, that's been hard. So while again holistically it's better, every day is a battle, as I know it will be, as long as he's here with us.
How old is he now?
Dad was born in 1950, so he's 72.
72.
Mm-hmm.
And forgive me, I've forgotten the name of the woman at the vet center that he credits with saving his life.
Yep, Darshan. Darshan Shosky, and she's amazing, and she works in the Idaho Falls Vet Center. She recently got promoted, so she's not his therapist anymore, which he's bummed about, but she's an amazing person.
So, but she's still connected with his care in some way?
Yes, and she just manages now that center. So she's working more, at the government level of things, but she's still there. He still gets to see her, and they have great people working there that do the other people he gets to be with.
Is he still? I mean, he's an artist, right?
Yes.
Is he still active? He's still creating?
He is absolutely still creating. Yes, he goes through ebbs and flows, I think, with that. There's days that it gets overwhelming and it's too much for him to sit and focus, and then there's days that that's all he wants to do. So he does the carving sticks, so he carves on the walking sticks, and then he also does a lot of mosaic work. Recently here in the Boise area, I've joined the Idaho Veteran Chamber of Commerce on their board, and they're doing a gala this August for PTSD awareness. And Dad is so excited because they asked him to donate a bunch of his artwork for that. So he's been working feverishly around making some Purple Heart mosaics and walking sticks and Vietnam specific walking sticks for people to be able to, get at that gala. And he's super excited for that. So his artwork definitely still brings him a lot of joy.
Well, I do want to ask you, when do you sleep? But before we get to that, the thing that strikes me about this story is that moment at your kitchen table 4 years ago now, it wasn't just an episode, it was a pivot point. Like he came home, and for 30 years he built a family, he built a career. He didn't really talk about this with anyone. And now, ever since that moment at your kitchen table, like, this is his life, this is his new life, right? He went from no Vietnam, no military, nothing, to all Vietnam, all military, his life is now defined by his experience in Vietnam. I would assume that one of the things that comes along with a pivot like that is he's now, like you said, he's connected with ski. He's at the vets, he's involved with the vet center and the DAV. Is there a new community now around your father that didn't exist before? And how is he connecting with that? How's that changed things for him?
Yeah, definitely a new community. And, some days he'll say that, he's so grateful. I mean, he's always grateful, but some days he talks, about how he's so excited that he met up with these people that maybe he hadn't seen in so long. And other days, it's, I don't want to talk to you today about anything that has to do with Vietnam. I can't think about it. I don't want to talk about it. So again, there's still like those dark days that happen for him. It's not all joyful, because there's so much trauma associated with the experience. Even though now at this point, we're not in the trauma realm anymore, we're trying to heal from that, but it's still hard for him not to think about those traumatic experiences that he had there. So some days it's completely off limits. Other days, he just wants to talk to others, connect with others. He has done some work at his local vet center with Afghanistan veterans that are coming home and dealing with PTSD. Just trying to talk with them and be somebody who, while Vietnam might not be on the same level as Afghanistan, a lot of the episodes of PTSD, the symptoms, the feelings, the loneliness, the depression, they relate so quickly. And to see somebody of his age, of his experience, being a combat Marine, they just instantly gain respect with one another. And it's like those young soldiers coming home just see hope, because they think, okay, if this 72-year-old man lived through what he lived through and is still on a day-to-day basis functioning, there's hope for me, and so that's really powerful for him. He met Ski and Al, which we've talked about before with his eyewitnesses, but he also met a Marine, Sam, who was in his unit, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines as well. And they've actually gotten together a few times, and that's been really neat to see. Sam came up to Idaho to visit my dad, and then my dad went down to California to stay a few days with Sam as well. And that's, again, just been a really healthy connection for him. Sometimes they talk about Vietnam, sometimes they don't, it's just whatever the two of them are feeling, but they have such a bond. It just is mind blowing to me, the bond that these Marines have. It's something that everybody should covet in our lives, because they get together. It's been 52 years since they've seen each other, and it's like no time at all has passed. They would do anything for each other. And that's just really incredible to see. If Sam was here, he would tell you there has been many days that I have called him on my knees begging for advice, like, Dad is in a dark space today, I need help. And he is instantly telling me what to do, what to say, what not to say, and checking in on my dad, whether it's 1 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock the next day, whatever they work out together. It's just been so incredibly great to have some people who can relate to him on that realm, because I'm his daughter, and there's that bond for sure. But his Marine buddies are just a whole nother thing that I've never got to see, and it's been really neat.
Is Sam struggling with similar issues?
Absolutely. And he's lived through the PTSD himself. He's at his local vet center doing things, and so it's just like that bond is there, but also that understanding, that empathy, that knowing, like, I know exactly what your dad is feeling right now because I feel it too, or I felt it too. So he's been just a huge guidepost for me and for my dad, as have others, but just an example of another person that we found on this journey.
Yeah. So is there it sounds like you've got it all kind of sewn up now, right? Everything that your dad needs to be service connected has been service connected. You mentioned this in our first interview together that, if you have a physical injury, a visible physical injury, that's fairly easy to document. But, with a TBI and PTSD, you can't see either of those things. What are the kinds of, talk me through how that makes your job as his advocate more difficult.
Oh yeah, anyone who is trying to get service connection for PTSD would probably tell you we've had 10,000 doors slammed in our face, of not believing it, it's not bad enough. PTSD is rated on a 30, 50, 70, 100 scale. So you hit those benchmarks and there's no in between. And it's very specific what needs to be occurring in the veteran's life to hit those different targets, right? And so the hardest part for us was my dad is a stubborn Marine. And every time that we would open a new claim or file an appeal, the VA requires you to go to an appointment and you have to talk to somebody, or if it's, on his hip or his back, they do measurements or they ask him to bend a certain way and see how it's functioning. But with PTSD, it's all psychology based. And so my dad would get so upset and frustrated to have to go sit with another stranger and try to talk about what is happening to him because of what he lived through in Vietnam. And so that was definitely the hardest part of all of this, because there were many days that I had to beg him, like, we've come so far, please, just one more appointment. You can do this. I know you can do this. And we would kind of talk through, we would like role play and practice, I know you don't want to tell this person what you did or what you saw or what's been haunting you, but if we can just get through one more of these, maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll finally be to that point. So that was definitely the hardest part, because as even with our episodes, Michael, Dad didn't necessarily want to interview with you. He wanted to interview with me and then have you use that interview. It's really hard for him to tell somebody who doesn't understand or relate or have been there what he's experiencing and what PTSD is doing to absolutely destroy his life. And so having to do those appointments over and over and over with every appeal or every new claim was definitely the hardest part for us. Yeah, as you mentioned, if you're missing a limb, or if you have a prosthetic, or if you have injuries that are visible, the rules are a little bit different in the sense that how they diagnose is a little bit more common eye. Whereas PTSD, it's just like, tell me the story. What's the story that's haunting you? And as you know, it's really hard for Dad to talk about the stories, and especially to strangers. So that definitely was the hardest part for us. And I'm so proud of him for all that he went through to get to where we're at, because it was a lot.
Yeah, I don't know what that process entails. I would imagine it's more than just telling the stories. It's probably also they need to know how those things are manifesting themselves on a day-to-day
Absolutely.
basis. And the only, I mean, what evidence would they be looking for other than his own account of his daily life?
Absolutely. Yep. His own account. We had my mom write letters because they live together and she sees it 24/7. Things like forgetfulness, not being able to sleep at night, just all of the parts that are PTSD, that when you go into a VA appointment for 1 hour, how do you ever convey all of the things that are happening, right? And so we did do things like writing letters. There was a time that my dad was in a grocery store and he had his Agent Orange Awareness shirt on. And a young gentleman came up to him and said some really inappropriate things, about how that was so long ago, you need to get over it. Just a lot of stuff that was completely inappropriate, and that person needs some education, right? But my dad kept his cool, and he had just gotten out of therapy, and I'm grateful that he had, because it worries me that a lot of people don't understand, especially like we've talked about with not being able to see PTSD, when you say things like that might be a trigger, what that could end up like. And again, I'm just really proud of Dad for working so hard to get to that point. But it was instances like that where he would share stories like that with me, and I would document them, and I would write them down, and I would date them, and I would say, here's something that happened. These kinds of things are triggers for him, and that would be evidence that we would submit on behalf of his claim as well. One time he wore 2 different shoes into a store because it just happened that morning. He didn't even realize it. And again, somebody says something and then it throws him into a spiral. I'm grateful that he trusts me enough to confide in me those kinds of things that happen, because it's embarrassing for him. It's, he feels a lot of shame. He doesn't understand why his brain is behaving the way that it is. It's been really hard for him to kind of internalize all of that. So when he shared stories like that, I would just write everything down, and then I would submit that too. We also got his vet center documentation as well to be able to submit as evidence, because it is really hard to prove where you're at on that spectrum. Again, when you just have that 60-minute appointment with some stranger who's, literally just sitting there checking boxes as you're talking, which feels really cold too, when you're trying to tell traumatic experiences that have happened to you.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to take something that can't be quantified and they're
And
trying to quantify it.
exactly. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he would have gotten here without you.
Yeah, we have a lot of conversations about that. And, I would be lying if I said that I feel like it still hasn't hit me. Like everything that we've gone through there's days that I'll sit down and like re-listen to, his episode on the Oliver North show or our podcast with you. And I just sit there for a minute and think, my God, we've been through a lot, like we have been through a lot. And so many of the veterans that I talk to that share their stories say, oh yeah, I tried to file my claim and they denied it, and like period, end of story, and so it was a lot to continue to pick ourselves up every time we were told no, or we were told, yes, he can have his disability service connected, but it's only going to be at 60% or whatever it might be, and to appeal and appeal and appeal. That took a lot. And there's times that I feel like I really need to sit down and reflect on that with him. And other times that, it just, somebody will say something to me like, how did you do that? And it's, in my mind, it's just like, well, how did I not? I didn't feel like I really had a choice, I mean, when my dad came to my kitchen table that day, he was ready to take his life. And that was what I was faced with, so how could I not? How could I not do everything within my power to fight for him? I guess that's how I would answer that question of how we got to where we did. It was just I love my dad so much, and he is such a hero in my eyes, and I would do anything for him. And I hope that I have proven that to him, so that he knows that anytime he needs someone in his corner, he can count on me.
Yeah, I don't imagine he has any doubt about that. And I talk to a lot of people. I mean, I hear a lot of stories and about Vietnam veterans and how their lives are affected, almost 50 years later, and I'm just surprised at how, I don't know why I'm still surprised. It shouldn't be surprising now, but I'm still surprised at the degree to which an advocate changes everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, why is it that we're still at this point where you have to have an advocate who's a family member or a spouse or somebody outside of the bureaucracy? Why aren't there advocates inside the bureaucracy, right? Why isn't that entire system advocating for these
Yes.
men?
Oh my gosh, that is $1 million question, right? I just kept asking that. I mean, I'll tell you, when I first convinced my dad to file for his disability, I thought it was going to be so easy, Michael. I was like, you'll file, they have your records, it'll be no big deal. We'll just get everything, and then you'll be taken care of. And my God, did I have lessons learned, right? Like, holy cow, is it not that? It's totally not easy. And that's part of why I am continuing to have such a voice in our local veteran community, because I've lived it now. And it's like, how many of our veterans out there need care, but they have no clue how to fill out that paperwork? That's step one, right? Like, filling out the paperwork was too much for my dad. The first step we did was him signing everything over to me so that I could fill everything out on his behalf, because even just that piece, and I'm telling you, the paperwork was stacks and stacks every single time. It was too much for him. He couldn't sit down and like write on a sheet of paper how much his back hurt or what caused it to hurt, or, and over and over and over and over. So, I mean, yes, an advocate is key. It's sad that it's that point, right? Like you're saying, it doesn't feel like it should have to be so hard to get these veterans what they deserve and what they need to be cared for. But yeah, I agree. We have a lot of great VSOs, the veteran service organizations, but definitely, if I've learned anything, it's somebody who's in your corner, somebody who's, whether a family member or not, but somebody that you can trust and that, for lack of better phrasing, knows the system. It's keywords. It's, like I said before, all of the different claims that we had to file. I think in the end, my dad was at like 170%. Obviously, they only give 100, but filing those different 12 claims got us to that point. Again, I wouldn't have known that you break everything apart like that. So it's definitely a team effort, and you do need somebody who can help navigate all of that for you, especially our Vietnam era veterans who, records are shoddy, it's hard to find evidence, it's hard to find witnesses, it's all of that kind of stuff is a whole nother realm that hopefully veterans now that are, coming home in this day, things are a little bit more like in place and secure with their records, at least for that part. But definitely our Vietnam era veterans need our help.
Um, when I last spoke with you, you were working with a member of your congressional delegation to try and make this easier for people who were coming down the path behind you. Um, has there been any movement or progress on that front?
Yes, yes. So after Dad got his Purple Heart, I could have just walked away with a thank you, but of course I didn't. I followed up with Senator Crapo, is who we worked with here in the state of Idaho, and his team and I met with the Colonel Tyler Zagorski in the Marine Corps office. We had a Zoom call together, and I just kind of explained what our process looked like and the frustrations that we had. And the main thing I asked of them, which has been changed, was that when they get a request for a medal, they get the service member's C file. Because if you recall, that was the step that they kept getting my dad's records from his St. Louis archive and not his complete military record. So that, I'm very proud to say, is something that they said is an easy fix that they can do, and that they were planning to do, immediately. To be able to just have that be step one. When somebody files, we get their C file, and that way we have everything that's around their case right there in front of them. So that was really incredible. Also, there was some personnel changes that he shared. He couldn't name names, but he shared that there were things happening in that office because he was embarrassed, his words, of how we were treated. And so that was really nice to hear too, because I really felt like, as we just said, people working in Marine Corps headquarters should be champions for Marines, and we didn't see that. And so that was really great to hear him share that with us as well.
Yeah, so that's, sort of smoothing the path for people on the, who are pursuing medals.
Mhm.
What are you aware of anything, any movement that's being, any progress that's being made in terms of just making it easier on the getting issues service connected on that side of the equation?
Gosh, that one is so many parts and variables and pieces. And the one of the main things to learn, I've learned, is again the vocabulary of how they diagnose things and how they specify degree of things. So like the PTSD, for instance, the 30, 50, 70, 100, understanding what those different milestones are and really reading through. If you're denied on a claim, they send some reasons of why you're denied. And I hadn't really dug into that previously, but it was something that I started like scouring and learning everything about before we would submit an appeal or an additional claim. So really understanding those parts and pieces. As far as like the reviewers, I know they're working on speeding up the time frame because it was taking like 6 to 12 months to get an answer, and that has looked better. But I keep telling my dad, I would love to get hired by them, go through the training of what it looks like to be a reviewer and try to understand that process. Because in my mind, it's like, how do you get a claim like Bill Klobas's, for instance, and deny it? It makes me wonder, like, are there keywords that they're looking for? Do they even look at the full record? Do they just look at, some little piece of what that doctor in that 60-minute appointment wrote down? I don't know. I don't know what all that behind the scenes stuff looks like, but I can definitely tell you that it's stuff that we continue to talk about, at least here in the Boise community, the veteran community, and talk about, how you be an advocate and how you support people filing for disability, knowing that it's going to be such a hard road in all those different avenues. And each thing is rated differently. Like his tinnitus, for instance, the ringing in his ears, it max out at 10%. You cannot get above 10% for ringing in your ears, even though that is a constant thing that is happening to him. And hearing aids, nothing will stop it. He constantly has that. 10% is the most. And so things like that too, that it's just like, wow, that I feel like that really, you should be able to get more disability rating for something like that, And that's something that our Afghanistan soldiers are coming home with a lot of, because of all of the IEDs and all of the stuff that they had to experience day in and day out. Tinnitus is a big one. So just one small example, but I'm not aware of anything right now that's being done like at that level. But I'm definitely aware that we were not alone in thinking how insanely ridiculous it was to try and get help, and all of the hoops that you have to jump through.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I I've heard your story of advocacy, and then I don't remember the episode number, but the title of the episode was Agent Orange, and I talked to a woman named Diane Parisi, who had gotten her husband's issues service connected, and so as you said, she kind of learned the system,
Yeah.
and she learned it the hard way, and now she helps other Marines. I think when I spoke to her, this is I don't even know how long ago, 18 episodes ago. Uh, is that right? Man. Um, she uh, she had helped 15 or 17 other Marines get their health issues service connected. So,
Mhm.
I hear these stories of individuals who've had to learn, blaze the trail, pick up all the thorns along the way, and then who say, I'm going to help other people so they don't have to, so they can have an easier time than I had. But those are individuals. Like, is there anything that you're aware of being done at a more systemic level I mean, because everybody's learning the same lessons.
Right.
Is there any way we can package all that up and make it available more broadly so that the next person doesn't have to learn the lessons the hard way and then become an advocate the way that you did?
Yeah, I mean, that would be like the ticket, right? And I think, if I'm understanding correctly, that's what VSOs are supposed to be, the veteran service organizations like the DAV, like the VFW. There's a lot of really great ones, and they're doing really important work. I'll tell you that what we ran into with them is my dad with his DAV representative, he was, service member 5,426 that this person was helping. And so for them to get to know on an intimate level that veteran is impossible because they are stretched so thin. So I think that VSOs are meant to fill that space. They're meant to be the ones that can guide you, to help you fill out the paperwork. They also, when you sign over your rights, they have the right to submit claims on your behalf. They have the right to appeal on your behalf. They help fill out forms, those kinds of things. But again, I just think that they're stretched so thin, and they're helping so many people, that to really get to know someone like my dad, it never happened. It wasn't like I could call them and be like, hey, dad's having an episode today, I need to document this. And they would be like, okay, who was your dad again? And, like, when did he serve? And so every time it was like, having to reiterate that. And so I feel like the funding is just not there to make it to where they can actually do the work they were designed to do, kind of like the VA, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, the difficulty is in scaling, right? And I think no matter how much resource they have, they're always going to have an issue with scale.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they shouldn't have, if they wanted to invest in their own ability to scale, maybe they could create a program that educates advocates like you, right?
Right.
So,
Like a
because
train
they'll
the
never,
trainer.
right, exactly. They'll
Mm-hmm.
never have enough staff. Can they train a volunteer army of people to
Right.
to manage some of this stuff more
Yeah.
easily?
Yeah, or even, other veterans. I feel like it's something. I know my dad is getting to a point now that maybe he wouldn't be the best in that kind of a role with his mind and stuff, but man, it would be so fulfilling to a veteran to help another veteran,
Yeah.
get through something like that. So I agree. It's like that. It's almost like those grassroots things, like you're saying. I remember that episode, and she was adamant about like documenting everything, right? And like making copies. And if you send anything to the VA, you better keep your own copy, because they're going to lose it. And then it's going to come back to, them saying, we never received that, or we lost that file. And if you didn't make a copy for yourself, then you have to start all over digging that back up, or requesting it from where it came from, or, and so little things like that you're saying. I say little, they're not little, they were important steps. But there are things that you learn along the way that you just hope that the next person doesn't have to go through.
Hmm. Well, is there anything else you want to add about how your dad's doing, how you're doing? Anything else that you think listeners should know about your story or just about the issue?
I think I shared last time just that I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to tell his story. I'm grateful that he's still with us. I'm grateful that every day PTSD is not the winner thus far. And I'm so grateful for your podcast. And I hope that doesn't make you embarrassed. I am so grateful for Echoes. I have gotten so many connections with other Vietnam veterans, with other children who are supporting their Vietnam veterans, or, going to the wall, doing the memorial. You had an episode with a family, and that child reached out to me, and we connected instantly, because there's something about growing up in the household with a Vietnam veteran. Nobody understands like another child of a Vietnam veteran. And so the opportunities that this has afforded me have been really, really awesome and really significant. And, here in the local community, but also at a national level, people are reaching out and just asking questions, and, getting to help people start that journey of getting in with their benefits, or the metals department as well. I've had a couple of different people reach out to me and ask how to start with going about getting missing metals. That's really fulfilling to me, because it's them validating that they can trust me, that they do trust me, and that, maybe I can help one other person along the way. So just gratitude, Michael. That's what I would end with.
Yeah, which brings us back to, when do you sleep?
I do sleep. And I dream about different things.
Sunday afternoons from 1 to 3.
Right. And then we're thinking about all the things that still need to be done, right? Constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a film production crew here in Boise that just premiered a movie called I Married the War. And it's all of the spouses of combat veterans from across a lot of different wars. But man, was it incredible to watch. And then they brought the women in to do a panel after the premiere of the movie. And gosh, just the stories, the resilience, the navigating the system, the caring for their ailing, husbands, wives, whatever it might be. It was just, those kinds of things make what I've done look like nothing. It's incredible to see that side of things. I think that it's often, the veterans deserve all of the accolades that they get, absolutely. But I think the families are often overlooked, in a sense of like what they dealt with day in and day out, living with that veteran, what the children dealt with, what it looked like. After the tragedy in our family that just happened, I've talked with my brothers on scales of, that we've never talked at before. And it was like, gosh, there's things that happened in our childhood, like even just inviting a friend over to the house, that we just didn't do, because you never knew what kind of a mood dad was going to come home in, and things like that now as an adult, you're like, as a child, it felt normal to me because that was life. But now it's like, gosh, that wasn't normal, And so I feel like the family side of caring for a veteran, living with a veteran, however you wanted to look at it, is just such an underappreciated aspect of this whole picture, And so it was really neat to see that film crew make a movie focused primarily on the spouse and their role. But yeah, again, just incredibly strong people that inspire you.
Yeah. Yeah, the woman I just spoke with before I got on with you, Cyndy Stancliff, one of the things that she said was, and again, this is not surprising to me, except in the sense that I'm surprised more people don't think this way. Her advice was, I think for a family member who's living with a veteran who's dealing with PTSD, it's sort of automatic. The first thing you think is, how do I get help for him or her, the service member who's struggling. But she said, there's also help available for you.
Yes.
And, I guess because I'm aware of it, and if I were in that situation, I think, well, I have a friend who's going through something similar, and, he's trying to help everybody else, but he's not trying to help himself. And so it was automatic for me to say, that person in your family is not the only one who needs care. You need care also. And so it seems like such a no-brainer to me, but I'm surprised that that doesn't come up more often.
Yeah.
Right? How does the family member who's trying to advocate, how does that person get
help.
Recharged, refueled?
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say, I've told my dad, like, after everything that we went through, I had to do a lot of therapy. I really did, because I heard things that from my father that I never anticipated hearing and that were really hard to hear. You know, I can't tell you how many times I sobbed on the phone with him and begged him to not let the PTSD win, and talking through the stories and just hearing him fall apart. Like all of those things definitely damage you as a person and as a caregiver. So I absolutely agree. But it seems like the caregiver role too is like that person that just wants to give, 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 and often has a hard time remembering, that they need to receive sometimes too. So yeah, the caregiver program is incredible. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation, I think, has a really neat aspect to that. And I've done some of their tele-webinar type things where I've gained a lot from it, seeing other perspectives. And then as I've shared, connecting with other Vietnam veteran children has been life-changing for me. Just being able to connect with somebody who completely understands what I'm going through, and what the stories are like, or, all of those different aspects of what it's like to live with a Vietnam veteran. Or care for them now, where we're at now. But
Well,
it's definitely
I hope that's a forum where I mean, obviously the helping each other deal with just the daily life with a veteran is, you know, the essential part of that. But hopefully it's also a forum where you can share with each other, here's what I learned about processes and bureaucracy,
yeah,
and here's where you're going to run into roadblocks, and here's how to end run around them, and making sure that for example, always keep a copy for yourself, those kinds of things.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't, how many still say like, my dad still hasn't said a word to me about Vietnam, and they're 75 years old. And so there's still a lot of that too. Like, how do I even approach the subject with him at this stage of his life? And for some people, they never get to have those conversations with their Vietnam veteran. It's not something that they are ever willing to speak about. And I'm sure that's hard. Like, I really am grateful that my dad opened up to me, to share those stories, but it doesn't diminish the fact that he shared some really gnarly stories with me, and so trying to like process that as his child has been just a whole nother aspect of it. But yeah, we definitely share the things that we've learned along the way for those that are, just starting out
Yeah.
in that avenue, and also cheer each other on along the way. Like, don't give up. They came back, they said no, or they rated him at 10%. What do I do now? Well, you appeal, and you appeal right now, and you get on it fast, and get all this documentation, get a letter from some, just all of those kinds of things to be able to say, don't give up. That's really the bottom line.
Well, that's just a perfect ending. I did want to kind of circle back on one thing that we talked about earlier, because I know that you did have at least one issue that you mentioned with the quality of his care. But generally, aside from that issue, I think we spent a lot of time sort of, I don't want to say bashing, but we've been very frank
Mm-hmm.
about the challenges of dealing with the government bureaucracy. That's more about the process of getting things service connected. Once your dad had his TBI and his PTSD fully service connected, the quality of the care that he's getting, it sounds to me, with that, with maybe an exception here or there, has been pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. The quality of care has been good. It's, he's getting help with dental that he never had before. He's getting continued help with his psychological, on a level too, that I feel like, I don't know how the system works of how they like flag or tag veterans and their disabilities that they have. But I feel like the nurse and the doctors that he's assigned are more responsive to us now. So absolutely, he's getting care. I mentioned he has glaucoma. He's getting care with his eye doctor. He's getting care with his dentist. He's getting care with his psychologist. He has his primary care physician that he still sees twice a year. And being at 100% now, he's also able to go to any doctor in his local community, for anything that he might need. An example, his back has been bothering him again. He has degenerative spine issues, and he's able to just go into his spine doctor now and, get a shot if he needs it, talk about surgery, whatever that's going to be, without having to go through the paperwork and the pre-approval process. So that definitely has been an improvement, that we've seen, that he's living day in and day out now with where we're at.
Yeah. So it sounds like once the professionals get involved, it's it's generally a pretty good experience, a
Yes.
pretty responsive situation. It's getting from here to there that
Yeah,
is the hard part.
definitely. Yep, that's a great way to summarize it.
Mm.
Yeah, super grateful for that. And I'm telling you too, this journey, this experience with my dad, obviously I didn't share all of it with my children. I, shared age appropriate things with my kids, but my gosh, the other day at school, Abigail was told that she couldn't pursue her associate's degree in high school because of how their school is set up. And she's like, Mom, they told me no, but I went back and told them why it needs to be yes. And I'm telling you, that was like the proudest moment of my life thus far, because it was like, she's seen me get no so many times throughout this, right? And like, we didn't stay with that. We didn't let that be the answer that they wanted it to be. And she, gathered all of her evidence and took it in and presented it. And guess what? We're doing it. So
Yeah.
there's
Wow.
there's just been things like that I've been like, wow, there are some silver linings throughout this entire journey that happened right here in my house that maybe I wasn't even aware of or privy to, that now I'm seeing, that are coming out in them. So yeah, it was a very proud moment. You don't have to take no just because that's what somebody said, you know?
Yeah. Even if that person has on a white coat and a clipboard and looks very
Exactly.
official, right?
Yes, we can respectfully disagree.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's amazing. That's great. Well, it's no surprise to me that you're raising a couple of powerhouses. Like, how could they not be?
Definitely trying. Yeah.
Now, your dad meant, sorry, I know we're past our time. But I did want to ask about Zaya
Hmm.
and remind me whose daughter that is.
My brother Kelly's daughter.
Kelly's daughter. And
Hmm.
how's she doing?
She's good.
Yeah.
I think she's so young that she didn't really resonate with what was happening. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So
Mhm.
the day that it happened, like it all just happened so quickly. And then my dad quickly left and excused himself because
Mm.
he knew that something was happening, really powerful to him that he didn't really understand at the time either. Right. So yeah, I mean, she's doing great. She's
Okay.
7 years old and just being a kid and still absolutely adores her grandpa. They do everything together. And
Excellent.
yeah, she's definitely what keeps him going. They live really close to each other, so he gets to spend a lot of time with her.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,